Get free tech advice for your business from O2 Gurus. Search O2 Business for more. The Sony Xperia Z4. I wasn't even that annoyed when I heard it wouldn't be called the Z4 here in the UK. It's a Z3 Plus. The Plus seemed a little bit more appropriate. After all, it's a very similar device to its predecessor. It looks very similar, it has a waterproof body, lots of cores, 3 GB of RAM, a 5.2-inch Full HD display. Sony Xperia Z3 Plus, pretty appropriate name. So what is new? It's a thinner phone with less flaps, more memory, and a new processor. That sounds great, right? Well, it should be great. And it's great for the most part, but there are some major shortcomings. We're going to start off with the design, and fortunately this is one area that Sony builds upon its successes. I love the Z3. Classical, sleek, pretty timeless. The Z3 Plus is better. Well, it's thinner at 6.9mm and it's lighter too. It also has an exposed microUSB port. The speakers are also more elegantly implemented. Instead of bookending the display within the glass, they are slits, one up top, one down below. The sides are more rounded than the Z3 was, more glossy, as too are the impact-resistant corners. It all feels less iPhone-y, more slippery, though also more unique. In traditional Sony style, all the buttons are on the right, the headphone jack is up top and the USB port down below. The camera, flash and NFC contact point are all around the back. In hand, it has the finish of a flagship, more refined than the Z3 was in all ways but one. The glass on the Z3 naturally led into the frame. That means there wasn't a noticeable ridge when you slid your finger across the glass to the edge. Now there is with the Z3 Plus. While this seems bad, it does prevent the Z3 Plus from sliding off smooth surfaces all by itself. That said, I personally prefer the finish of the Z3 in that respect, even if it does have some phantom gliding habits. Just a few hours ago, my review device fell off a surface. It didn't break, but it did fall over a meter onto a tiled floor, and it resulted in just a little chip, and I actually thought it was going to be a little bit more serious than that. Generally, therefore, the design is an overall triumph. The best from Sony since the Xperia Z Ultra. The screen's also brilliant. Full HD Triluminous IPS tech and 5.2 inches. It's beautifully saturated and sports great viewing angles. Reds in particular look immense when side by side with an iPhone, and color depth is ultimately richer. Whites are a touch cool for some, but this can be customized in the settings. One thing I'd have liked is a lower minimum brightness for bedtime reading. It's reassuring I'm not adding Quad HD to the list. Full HD on this phone is just fine at 5.2 inches. If it helps minimize the impact on battery, even better, especially considering the Z3 Plus battery isn't really that great, but I'll come on to that later. It's also worth noting that the touchscreen's been optimized to cope with a slightly wet screen, so now it actually works really well when you swipe across it, even if it has just freshly come out of the water. So that's one area the Z3 Plus definitely excels over all of the Z3s before it. So far so good. Good design, good screen. Now onto the user interface, and Android 5.0.2 paired with Sony's user interface sounds, well, once again, pretty good. If you've seen any Sony devices before, then you'll know what to expect. Home screens, an apps tray, a pull-down notifications bar. You can swap out themes easily and customize your quick toggles, which is ace. While this is all familiar Xperia fare, one wonderful addition is landscape mode. This means your home screen and apps tray reorient along with most apps from portrait to landscape. So if, like me, you use a physical keyboard, this is a godsend. The oh so welcome PS4 remote play is also here, along with some old favorites. Proprietary social and navigation services just don't have a place on new Android phones in 2015, other than possibly Facebook, Twitter, and of course Google Maps. Sony's gallery, music, and video apps do look great though, so these are welcome additions. The interface isn't just a little puffy when it comes to bloatware, it also slows down a bit every now and then. Lollipop does have some inherent issues with multitasking, there is that, but there's also the chipset. I don't know which contributes more to it, so all I can do is report on the matter. So while it isn't going to stagger like the Note 4 did after its Lollipop update, it just isn't as silky smooth as I'd expect from a 2015 flagship. Now on to multimedia, and the camera on the Z3 Plus is 20.7 megapixels around the back and 5 megapixels around the front. The main camera sensor is the same that was found on the Xperia Z1, Z2, Z3, Z3 Compact, and now the Z3 Plus. That isn't the best news, but neither is it the end of the world. Sony's had plenty of time to hone the technology inside that sensor and optimize their software as best as possible for it. And indeed, it is the best we've seen from Sony. White balance is better than that of its predecessor, as are general images. The camera isn't as good as the LG G4, the iPhone 6 Plus, or the Galaxy S6 on the whole. It is, however, better than the HTC One M9 and, like I said, the Z3, so instantly it is relatively competitive. Macro shots look fair, details good, and low light performance is markedly improved over the Z3. There's also a strong flash as well, which can light up small groups nicely. Rounded off with a physical camera button, and picture taking on this thing is, well, pleasurable. Shooting modes vary, from things we've seen before like AR fun and multi-camera, all the way through to new AR modes that take advantage of the front camera. With its 5 megapixel resolution, the front camera is markedly improved over the Z3. Better detail, a wider angle, and full HD video capture. The AR modes overlay things on your face, makeup, color picking, or animal faces. If you fancy changing races or indeed species, this is the mode for you. Feel free to take pictures in this mode, but try not to record video. If you do, the whole thing's going to overheat and shut itself down. That's the camera, not the phone. Speaking of video though, that's a good segue, and this thing records full HD video as well as 4K too. There's still no touch to focus or OIS when shooting video, though digital image stabilization does work well. Quality is good, though thanks to that digital stabilization, a fair bit of cropping goes on, so you can say goodbye to that wide angle. Also, 4K video heats things up just like it did on the Z3, only on the Z3 Plus it happens quicker. We averaged between 1 and 2 minutes before the camera shut itself down. Yeah, that's not great, especially considering other phones are getting 5 minutes or thereabouts. Hopefully the Z5 will have a new sensor with 2015's finest technology inside when it comes out. Moving on to gaming, and thankfully for the Z3 Plus, this is one area that I personally didn't get any overheating issues, and I gamed a lot on this thing. I played everything from Chaos Rings 3, Dragon Quest 8, right through to Modern Combat 5. Gaming was unanimously great for me. The fact it also has 32 gig under the hood means I could get loads of games on here too. No issues, and while it got warm, it never got crazy hot. PS4 Remote Play and DualShock 4 controller support means this is a superior phone when it comes to gaming. Sony also includes 3 movies from their Xperia Privilege service. These can be downloaded, and being an Android phone, streaming services are also abundant. The screen and speakers showcase movies off very well, and if you plug in some decent cans, you can also take advantage of the high-res audio support too. Like I said, 32 gig of memory under the hood and microSD expandability. Great. Connections are great too. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.0, 3G, 4G up to Cat 6, NFC and a GPS. There's no IR blaster, but that isn't really that big a deal, and if you're Sony'd up, TV side view works with Bravia televisions. So far so good, but now we're going to talk about heat and general usability in day-to-day life with the Z3 Plus. This is where things start to fall apart a bit. Is it Sony's implementation of the Snapdragon 810? Is it something else? I honestly don't really know. Specifically, it's pretty common knowledge Sony and HTC have both underclocked the 810 inside their flagships. Why? To counteract heat, because heat's a real issue here. I've touched on this before, but I was only just scratching the surface. This is really evident when you benchmark the Z3 next to the Z3 Plus because, well, the older Z3 actually wins out, which is just weird. On many occasions, I had to take the phone out of my pocket to cool down, and that's with the screen being off. With double tap to wake turned on, the screen turned on in my pocket occasionally, and with double tap to wake turned off, it did the same. Maybe the power button's more easy to press? Either way, with the screen on, this turned into a real pocket heater. In fact, I'd go so far as to say it felt like my thigh had a phone-shaped rash on it. Once I'd loaded all my apps on the Z3 Plus, this happened at least 3 or 4 times a day. It's worth noting I couldn't emulate that heat without a SIM card in my phone. The other heat issue comes from using the camera as highlighted. To recap, it's a Qualcomm Snapdragon 810 paired with 3 GB of RAM. This has been tried and tested in combinations like the HTC One M9 and the LG G Flex 2. Performance in these was great, though they did get hot as well. But why does the Z3 Plus get hotter? Who knows, but it does, and this is a giant issue for me. This is a very well-spec'd phone, but I categorically cannot recommend it. Not until Sony pushes out an update that improves the user experience here, because in its current state, in the real world, it's a very bad one. Sadly, this wasn't helped by the battery. Some days it would die by 1 PM with my working day starting at around 8:30. Admittedly, I'm a heavy user, but it's nothing my iPhone 6 or Samsung Galaxy S6 wouldn't be able to cope with. This was exacerbated by the fact that Xperia Z3 Plus turned itself on in my pocket, no doubt wasting that precious battery and setting my thigh on fire in the process. I really wanted to, and I expected to like the Z3 Plus a whole lot more than I did. After all, it's a Z3 but better, right? Yeah, wrong. The Z3 is actually an easier device to recommend, even with that 16 GB of onboard memory. I don't know how much blame lies with Qualcomm, and I don't know how much lies with Sony, but one thing I do know is that I categorically cannot recommend the Xperia Z3 Plus until it stops heating up my thigh. And that's in spite of the incredible design, the great screen, really strong user interface, and the excellent multimedia performance. Better luck next time, Sony. Hopefully, in spite of the negative review, you still enjoyed the review and found it useful. If you did and you like BTechs in general, then click subscribe to the channel. That's how you're going to stay on top of everything we do. Like this video, and if you've got any questions about anything I spoke about, fire them in the comments section below. Thanks for watching BTech.